Inside a warm house, a man hides under two blankets, and still he shivers. The heater hums the air thick with comfort. Outside, frost climbs the window like a slow hand. He turns away from it, afraid of a cold he doesn't know. But once on the Great Plains, there were no walls, no wires, no sound but wind. The kind of wind that didn't pass, it waited. And yet they slept. Under hides, on frozen ground, in shelters no bigger than the shadow of a fire. No insulation, no glass, no fear. They didn't run from the cold, they talked to it. You can almost hear it now, that quiet conversation between man and winter, because they didn't fight the frost. They understood it. Out on the Great Plains, winter didn't knock it hunted. The air bit at your lungs, the wind never stopped moving. There were no trees to hide behind, no cliffs to break the storm, just horizon ice and patience. When the cold came, you didn't build walls, there was nothing to build with. No logs, no stone, only the earth itself and your own understanding of it. So the Lakota, the Mandan, the Blackfoot, they learned where warmth hides. Not in fire, but in the land. They searched for places where the snow lay smooth, where the grass bent low. That's where the wind was weakest. The wise ones walked the ridges at dawn, watching how smoke drifted from their breath. They followed it, not to escape the cold, but to find the quiet behind it. There, in a shallow valley facing the southeast, they built, always toward the first sun, away from the night's teeth. Every teepee stood with its back to the storm, its heart toward the light. It wasn't luck, it was geometry born of memory. They didn't need weather forecasts. The snow told them enough. When it piled high in one spot, they knew that was death's corner. When it barely settled, they smiled, that was life's pocket. You can almost feel that instinct older than any map. And because they listened, their shelters breathed easy. The air moved slow, the heat stayed close. Wind tests in modern planes still show a teepee placed right loses 40% less warmth. That wasn't survival. That was conversation between man and wind, between patience and place. They didn't fight the world, they fit into it. Inside the teepee, the fire never roared, it breathed. Soft, slow, like the heart of the home. No iron stove, no metal pipe to carry the smoke away. Only hides poles and the wind itself. At 30 below, the problem wasn't just heat, it was air. Too much smoke, and the fire choked. Too little draft, and the people did. But they learned to make the wind work for them, not against them. The Lakota and Cree built teepees like lungs, living machines. 2 layers of buffalo hide, tight on the frame, loose enough to breathe. At the top, a smoke hole, not random, but tuned like an instrument. When the wind shifted, they turned the flaps to guide it. One side pulled air in low, the other drew smoke out high. A perfect cycle. A moving heartbeat. You can almost see it, fire pulling and breath exhaling warmth through the crown. The air inside rose, circled, and returned steady as thought. And the walls. They didn't trap heat. They trained it. The teepee didn't fight the wind, it danced with it. In 1936, Smithsonian engineers tested it. Even in a full blizzard, the air inside a properly vented teepee stayed 17 degrees warmer than outside. No technology, no electricity, just wind patience and geometry. What modern homes call HVAC, they built from memory. They didn't seal the cold out, they let the air live with them. Because warmth wasn't trapped, it was shared. They understood something we've forgotten, that a house doesn't have to be airtight to be alive. The ground was their enemy and their ally, frozen hard, stealing heat from every touch. But the Mandan and the Pawnee learned how to make even the earth gentle. They never slept on bare soil. They built it layer by layer until the cold forgot its way up. First came dry grass, woven tight like a mat of memory. Then willow branches bending, but never breaking. Over that thick hides, buffalo, elk, or deer, soft as breath, strong as bark. Sometimes they lined the center with flat stones warmed by the evening fire. Long after the flames died, the stones still whispered back their heat. You can almost feel it, that quiet warmth underfoot, older than comfort. Archaeologists found proof of this at Fort Randall in 1936, a double-layered lodge floor still marked with ash and grass fibers. Even after centuries, the pattern remained 2 levels of patience. Their tests showed it held warmth 6 degrees longer than open ground. 6 degrees. That's the difference between life that endures and breath that freezes. They didn't call it insulation. They called it home. Every winter when they rebuilt their lodges, they laid the floor again. Never the same, never careless. Each layer was a memory of the last storm survived. Each handful of grass carried a promise, we'll make it through again. They didn't just cover the earth. They spoke to it, asking it to hold them one more night. Because warmth doesn't only come from fire. Sometimes it rises from the ground itself. The fire wasn't always in the teepee. Sometimes it was in them. In their breath, their blood, their discipline. When the night fell to 40 below, they knew the rule that never failed. Don't sweat or you freeze. The Lakota hunters dressed like the land itself, layer upon layer of patience. Soft deer, hide close to the skin, then buffalo, then fur. Not tight loose enough to let the air move to let the body breathe. Because sweat was death and dryness was life. They worked slow, never rushed, never ran. They learned that heat isn't strength, it's balance. You can feel it in their rhythm, steady steps, slow breath, quiet endurance. When they traveled long miles across the snow, they stopped before the sweat came. They rested, cooled, then moved again. No panic, no waste, no arrogance against the weather. Just calm control, the kind only experience teaches. Inside the teepee, when the fire dimmed, they didn't fear it. Their bodies carried its memory. A furnace made of flesh, not wood. They didn't need roaring flames, only steady hearts. You can almost see it, a hunter's breath, turning white in the dark, rising slow, like smoke that remembers the sun. Each exhale a promise to the cold, not yet. They didn't burn the world to stay warm. They became the warmth, because the greatest fire is the one that learns to live inside you. The walls of a teepee were never dead. They were alive, thin-skinned, thick wisdom, built not to seal the cold out, but to let the warmth live inside. The people used 2 hides, one smooth, one rough. The inner skin was flat and tight, like the inside of a drum. The outer layer, coarse, uneven, full of life. Between them, a narrow breath of air, invisible but powerful. That pocket was their insulation, a living barrier of silence. When the wind came crawling across the plains, it hit the first hide and lost its bite. The air trapped between layers softened its anger, and what reached the inside was not fury, but calm. You can almost hear it, the teepee breathing. In, out. The wind enters low, the smoke escapes high, and the walls hum like lungs in the snow. Modern field tests at the University of Wyoming proved what they already knew. A double-hide teepee cuts the wind chill by 15 degrees. No plastic, no fiberglass, just patience, precision, and buffalo skin. And when the night turned cruel, they rubbed fat on the outer hide to block the frost. Buffalo tallow bear grease the same way a body shields its skin. The tipi, in a way, was skin itself, because when the hide kept the body warm, the body in return kept the soul warm, one breathing for the other. A quiet pact between flesh and shelter. They didn't build walls to protect, they built walls that understood. Warmth wasn't just built, it was shared. Inside every teepee, the Cree and Ojibwe understood a simple truth. The human circle was the first shelter ever made. At night, they didn't sleep apart. They formed a shape, the geometry of family. Children in the center closest to the small fire, mothers beside them, fathers on the outer ring. Every head pointed inward, every breath faced the flame. It looked like rest, but it was design. Their bodies created layers of heat, each person a living wall against the cold. The center stayed warm, the circle breathed together. Tests today show it could reduce heat loss by 25%, but they didn't need numbers. They had instinct. You can almost see it, the slow rise of breath, the glow of a single flame touching faces in silence. No words, no movement, only the soft rhythm of survival. The old one said the fire was a heart, and they slept like its veins, all connected. When one stirred, all felt it. When a child shivered, a mother's hand was already there. The tipi wasn't just a house, it was a heartbeat under hide. A warm silence shaped by love, not by architecture. Because in the cold, heat fades fast, but closeness endures. They didn't just stay warm, they kept each other alive. When the fire dimmed, silence took the night, but they were never unguarded. The storm outside howled like a living thing, and still inside the tipi, no one moved. The Cree and the Ojibwe had a rule: never sleep deeper than the wind. They built defenses not from walls, but from awareness. First, a low wall of snow packed tight around the camp. It broke the wind, muffled the sound, and marked the line between life and the storm. Then the dogs, 10 maybe more, lay in a circle beyond the hides. Their ears caught what human hearts could not. No alarm bells, no fences, only breath and instinct. You can almost see it, the shadows of men sleeping with knives within reach, bows and spears leaning by the entrance, their silhouettes still yet awake in spirit. The snow drifts whisper, the dogs stir, and for a heartbeat, even the wind hesitates. Because fear had no home there. They didn't fear the dark, they talked to it. The night in return showed respect. It watched but did not touch. Their defense wasn't built from strength, it was built from silence. From trust in the animals, in the circle, in themselves. They didn't conquer the night. They became part of it. And in that stillness, you can feel it, the quiet power of people who understood the dark, not as danger, but as company. Out there, warmth had no weight. It couldn't be carried, only understood. The Lakota, the Cree, the Mandan, they knew this truth long before we built walls. Their comfort came not from what they owned, but from what they remembered. They didn't build barriers, they read the wind. They didn't burn endless wood, they learned how to breathe with the fire. They didn't escape the storm, they listened to it until it stopped sounding like an enemy. Every choice was wisdom disguised as instinct. A tipi facing east, a floor of grass, a fire small enough to live long. None of it looked like technology, but it worked better than most of ours. You can feel it if you sit still, how every sound, every breath was part of an unspoken design between people and the cold. They didn't waste anything, not heat, not time, not fear, because survival wasn't about fighting the world. It was about belonging to it. The cold didn't forgive mistakes, but it rewarded understanding. And that understanding that wisdom weighed nothing. It didn't need to be carried in a pack or stored in a shelter. It lived in hands, in habits, in memory. So when the storm came, they didn't reach for tools. They reached for what they already knew, and that more than fur or fire was what kept them alive. The tipi glows faint in the snow. Smoke drifts away slow and tired. Outside, the wind still whispers, endless watching. Inside, the last ember breathes once more. Each spark is a choice. Each glow a memory that refuses to fade. They never feared the dark, they listened to it, because warmth was never fire alone. It stayed in the hides, in the stones, in the way they built, and the way they lived. When the flames died, the wisdom remained. And in that stillness, you can feel it, the quiet promise between man and winter. When the fire fades, the warmth stays. Stay by the fire.